Oh, hello. We're back again with another Shatterpoint tag review. I promise if you're patiently waiting for some content to do with Kill Team or just anything but a tag review, I have nearly talked about every unit in the game. Okay, we're getting there. I'm going to go through this with rankings, some list building thoughts. If you've been following the Shatterpoint videos on the channel this far, you know what's up. Now, I do have a preamble first because choosing to do a bounty hunter tag review is a little bit of an odd choice. Really, big tag is scoundrel, and I could have done a scoundrel tag review, would have taken me a few days. But within scoundrels, you've kind of got sub factions. You've got the bounty hunters, you've got the Mandalorians, you've got the sort of incidental scoundrels like Han Solo is a rebel, but he's a scoundrel. Moff Gideon is Imperial, but he's a scoundrel. There's quite a few of those knocking around. There's only really a handful of models that synergize with the scoundrel tag directly. Okay, and two of them here, the two primaries. Um, I'm not going to fully talk about those today. But I just wanted to bring them up so that you were aware of them, so that you could be thinking in your own mind, and I might be passing reference to them as we go along. So, Lando, first of all, Lando has the thing where he can pass conditions onto a scoundrel and give them a dash, and that can be a friendly scoundrel, or he can just pass his conditions onto an enemy scoundrel. And then he's got his conflicting responsibilities thing where he gives himself Galactic Empire or Rebel Alliance, and then he can glue together any scoundrels that you have taken in your list and give them either Galactic Empire or Rebel Alliance or Bespin to make list building work differently. So that's always an option. And then there's also Hondo, honest businessman, who again is a scoundrel, and he synergizes with scoundrel with his identity. Fair what's fair. When an allied scoundrel makes an attack as part of a combat action, if the defender is engaged with one or more characters in other allied units that are not wounded, it may add 2 dice to the attack. If it does, after the attack is resolved, each allied unit within 2 of the defender, except the attacking unit, gains a strain. Um, I'm not sure if this is good, right? Because it's 2 dice, and you're chucking out potentially multiple strains. But it's an option that's there for me. I'd love to know, because I might make an entire video about Hondo, because he's been buffed, but he is a bit of an enigma. Um, is Hondo good? Let me know. So I'm going to bring that up, but we are going to today exclusively talk about the bounty hunters, more or less, quite brief Karga as well when we get to him. But I just wanted to bring up that scoundrel. There is like a scoundrel list building ecosystem that you should sort of be at least somewhat aware of, right? So this is what we're concerning ourselves with today. Now, there have been 2 boxes that are principally concerned with bounty hunters. That's why we have 2 bounty hunter primaries and 2 bounty hunter supports. Okay. Now, in addition to that, we've got Jango Fett and Boosh, who are bounty hunters that are found in other boxes. That's why they're different colours. So Jango Fett is in Count Dooku's box and has the Separatist tag, and Boosh is actually it's Princess Leia cosplaying as Boosh, but she has the bounty hunter tag for when she's pretending to be Boosh, who comes into Skywalker's box. And then, separately to all of that, they released a box, didn't they, of just 4 really cool bounty hunter secondaries that you can add into your list. So I'm going to be approaching this with a bit of a view towards building a bounty hunter themed force, but you can also use it as your primer on the various bounty hunters and how they could slot into your lists that you're running yourself. So we're going to start with looking at the Mandalorian. You know, really popular primary actually. So we'll start with his identity. This is the way. When an enemy character wounds another allied unit, after the effect is resolved, one character in this unit can heal twice and can reposition. Then, each other allied bounty hunter, Mandalorian, and scoundrel unit within 4 can remove a condition from itself and gain a hunker. So Being able to heal and reposition whenever anyone wounds is pretty cool. Mandalorian doesn't really like going first, and it's quite frequent that you're going to want to reserve him if you do draw him in the first couple of draws, just so you can try and get him some moves up the board with his "this is the way" before he activates, so that he can do stuff. Okay, the sort of things with him falling within a condition and then gaining hunger. It's situational. When it happens, it's certainly nice to have. Um, and it's interesting to note that the Mandalorian, he is a bounty hunter, and a Mandalorian, and a scoundrel, and he supports all three of those tags equally. So when I do a video about Mandalorians, the Mandalorian will certainly crop up again in that. His next ability we're going to look at is a clan of two. So a clan of two costs a force. Each character in this unit may dash. Then, if all allied units within two are bounty hunter, Mandalorians, or scoundrels, one character in this unit may immediately make a 5-dice attack, or may choose an enemy character within 3 and push it 2 away. Like, wow. I know it's becoming a meme, but Luminara has to pay a force to get a dash. So you pay a force, you get a dash, and then, assuming you've adhered to sensible list building, you can either do a 5-dice attack or just casually do some diceless displacements for 1 force. Bear in mind as well, every other example of diceless displacement that we've seen really so far has tended to be like force push tends to be a 2-force thing. Now I know that's got better range sometimes, but this is really powerful. Yeah, it has a list building drawback you have to have. And even then, if you really wanted something that wasn't a bounty hunter, a Mandalorian, or a scoundrel, just keep them more than 2 away from the Mando isn't that hard. It would annoy me too much to do it, right? To just sort of casually shove some, um, you know, dark troopers on there or whatever we're doing. But yeah, like this is a really powerful ability. Then we got fearless and inventive for a force. So when you make an attack as part of a combat action before the dice are rolled, you use the ability, add 2 dice to the attack roll for each enemy character other than the target that's not wounded and is engaged with one or more enemy characters in the unit. So if they've got 2 supports knocking around together, or if you've just got one of those, sometimes you end up with a really congested point in Struggle 2 or Struggle 3 with loads of things on it, you just go, yeah, cool, I'll flip this and I'll get a bunch of extra dice, why not? It's very useful, very worth a force to do it. I don't think it is situational. You know, you'll go entire games and it'll never come up. That's fine. Yeah, it's just remember that you have it, right? That's the main thing. Remember that you have it for when it comes up. But you're not really going to be like, oh, I'm going to go over there and I'm going to do this and get the extra dice. Like it's not the thing. It's just like, oh yeah, I'll spend this to get extra dice now. That's cool. Yeah. Do the magic hand thing as a reaction. After a ranged attack targeting the character in this unit is resolved, you can use this ability if the attack roll contained 1 or more missed results. The attacking unit suffers 2 damage. I mean, yeah, we've seen this kind of ability before, and they don't often impress me. But this one is free. It is free, and it's on ranged attacks. So it's like, yeah, whatever. Take 2 damage. Cool. Why not? So I think he's got a really good suite of abilities. Like, not that impressed with the middle 2 abilities on his card, but his identity and a clan of 2, both really very good, I think. So let's look at his stance cards, and the first thing I want to say is look at his defensive expertise. It's quite good, right? If you get 2 expertise, that's 2 blocks and a crit to a miss, which is really, really punishing. Bearing in mind as well, he's rolling 6 dice, right? So he's got 6 dice defense on ranged and melee, and he has 11 wounds. You're not going to kill him easily, right? Which is pretty cool. And then you look at his stances. So he has Bring You In Cold, which is his sniper rifle stance. So he's got 5 range. He's rolling 7 dice. and then he's got Bring You In Warm, which is his pistol stance. So he's got 4 range, and goes down to 6 dice. And he's slightly better in close combat as well with that Bring You In Warm stance as well. So, pistol/combat stance. Bring You In Cold is fun. So if you look at the Ambient Sniper Rifles expertise tree, it has a mechanic that I think is supposed to reproduce the idea of getting a headshot, where if you happen to roll for expertise on your 7 dice, you just get to do 5 damage. Which, yeah, okay, it's a gamble. Now, we're going to see characters in this list that have a way of giving him an extra 3 dice. Yeah. So now you're rolling 10 dice. That's quite, it's not a dead cert that you're going to manage to get 4 expertise, but it's not. If you're rolling 10 dice, which is very doable with some of the other things that we're going to look at, it's not absurd, right? And if you did that, if you managed to hit that result, right, then easy money, you could do 10 damage and just job somebody, which is pretty funny. Now I've played against a lot of Mando. I've never seen it happen, but I've never played against him in Bounty Hunters, which is where we're going to see IG-88 gives you these 3 extra dice. I've seen him in Mandalorians, and mainly what he does is be tanky and stand on a point and do dice with displacement. And he's still really scary when that's what he's doing, right? But it's worth mentioning that he has this funny ability that could happen, right? And we're not really talking about investing a huge amount of effort into making it happen. We're talking about taking a character that we're probably going to take anyway if we're running all bounty hunters and spending a 4, right? So there's that option. Even without that, I think this stance is pretty good. 5 damage and a shove on 3. You get to 4. You can have a repo, or you can have another damage and a strain, or you can have a free use of a clan of 2, which is pretty good. Yeah, so he has a chance of going mad and absolutely murdering people. Without the expertise table being weird, he has a max of 5, 6, 8, which isn't the most, but you've got that option in your expertise table. Like, he's pretty killy to say how tanky he is and how much utility he has. Okay? And there's a shove on 2. Now, if you really need a shove, and that's if sometimes in this game a shove is all you need, that's when you might flip over to Bring You In Warm and just be like, cool, I'm going to roll my dice. Even though I only get 1 through, you're off the point and it's mine. You got the option, if someone's right on the thing and you need 2 shoves, or they got steadfast, you need 2 shoves, you got the option of going for it and trying to get 2 shoves that way. But honestly, you've got access to a can of 2 with your dice as displacement. So I don't know how often you're trying to fish for shoves in Bring You In Warm. And to be honest, you've got that shove on 2 in Bring You In Cold anyway. So I think it's going to be pretty rare that you end up on Bring You In Warm. But maybe I've just been seduced by that very silly prospect of doing 5 damage through on a 4-up on 4 expertise. I could spend all day playing the Mandalorian trying to get that result and have it never happen. But the one time it did happen, it would be very funny. Yeah. And then we've got Cad Bane. So I've actually got quite a lot of experience with Cad Bane because I've been running in Separatist for a long time. I've kind of gone off Cad. I'll tell you for why in a little bit. So we'll start with his identity. I'll take on any job for the right price. When allied character wounds an enemy unit, the effect is resolved. You refresh a force, and you can heal Cad. And if the allied character is a bounty hunter, you can refresh 2 force. So this is a really good identity. Like I said, I was taking him in Separatist lists where often he'd be the only bounty hunter, and I still found that worthwhile. That was a lot of force coming through, right? If you're taking Cad in a bounty hunters only list, then you're getting 2 force refresh just all the time, right? Anytime anybody wounds anything, you get 2 force back, which is really good. He also brings you 9 squad points, okay? But he's bringing all this utility Sometimes on his turn, he can feel like a little bit of a struggle, but we'll talk about why. Okay. So he's got How About You Step Aside, which costs a force. Choose an enemy character within 3, and an active objective it's contesting. The chosen character may dash away from the objective. Then, after any moves are resolved, if the chosen character is no longer contesting the objective, it gains disarm. If it's still contesting the objective, it gains an expose and a strain. So usually this is an expose and a strain for a force with an extra step, okay, which is your opponent has an opportunity to make the wrong decision. And the wrong decision is to actually dash and no longer be on the objective and gain a disarm. Now the thing is with CAD, it depends how you've lined up with the movement. What you want to be able to do is move, and then from your move, be in a position where you are within 3, but outside of 2 of a character on an objective. Okay, and then you can then jump afterwards, right, using rocket boots. So they move away, and then you jump onto the objective and take the objective, right? Or they don't move away, and you shoot them, and then you jump onto the objective. The one thing you have to watch out for a little bit with this is if you are on Needs No Introduction for whatever reason, where your ranged is much better than your melee, then what could happen is just that you use How About You Step Aside. If you imagine they're on the point and you're not, right, they then dash off the point, away from the point, but not, they still get to do the dash, even if it doesn't take them off the objective. So they might choose to dash off the point because maybe their melee defense is a lot better than their range defense, and they're then engaged with Kaz, and then they're exposed and strained, and you're going to have to punch them. But it's just one thing to watch out for, that it does mean that they can use that to force it to be a melee rather than a range. But it is still good, because chances are they're chosen. Not almost never when I've played this has the opponent gone, oh yeah, no, I'll walk off the objective and let you have it, and I'll be disarmed, right? So there's that. And then what you do, obviously, is if to get there you've had to move and then rocket boots, and then you do How About You Step Aside, and then they walk off, you go and flip over to Needs No Introduction and shoot them and try and get the jump on 2 to get that little extra bit of mobility, right? You got rocket boots, which is a force for a jump. Then he's got his reaction, no one gets between me and my job. After another allied unit makes a combat action, this unit may use this ability. If no characters in this unit are engaged, choose one of the targeted characters within 4. A character in this unit deals 2 damage to the chosen character. If none of the target characters within 4, you can jump. So this is a trigger that you will forget when you start playing CAD, and it's important to know that you have it, and you're constantly asking yourself, okay, someone on my team has made an attack, I'm not engaged, do I want to pay a force for a jump? Or if I'm within 4, do I want to pay a force for 2 damage? Now, I would say a force for 2 damage isn't usually worth it, unless that 2 damage is going to kill them. It is cool because it's straight damage, so it's going to ignore protection, defense rolls, and nothing like that, right? But jumping towards the combat is often useful. CAD really doesn't like being engaged, though, which is the thing. And then his stances. So I much prefer as long as I get paid, okay? Because you are on, you're better in melee, and he is that vulnerable. You're better in melee, and he does have that vulnerability of people being able to get into melee with him. And also, this is your damaging stance. Okay, so you're gonna try and get to through 3. If you go through to 3, you get 6 damage, and then if you get another one, it's 7 up to 8. So that can be really good. Bear in mind, your target's often going to be exposed. Um, but, right, the problem he's got is a lot of the time it seems like it's all going to be awesome. But a lot of the time, what happens is he'll go up to a point. There'll be somebody on the point. You'll say, "How about you step aside, which costs you force?" They'll be like, "Lol, no," and they'll be exposed and strained. And then you'll be like, "Cool, I'll attack you," and you'll do, 7 damage and a pin, um, which doesn't kill very many things, all told. And what you haven't done is shove them off the point or flip that point, right? And then you're sitting there going, "Well, I've mostly killed this guy. That's cool." But then you kind of stood there, and then Cad's only got 9 health himself. I just find him not that great on his actual turn. Now, maybe it's because he's difficult to use. I do think in a Bounty Hunters list, though, the constant 2-force refresh, and it's not like he's bad, you just actually not using that. I think that how about you step aside makes you think that he's someone that wants to get out there and switch points. I don't think he does often, unless he finds a point with somebody on there that's wounded, that's not wounded but already has taken some hits. I think most of the time on his activation, he's trying to get around, he's trying to chip damage on people, he's trying to do things. It's just quite often Shatterpoint sets us the puzzle of, okay, it's your activation goal for the point, right? And almost every character ends up being looked at through that lens of, okay, it's your activation goal flip a point. And Cat just can't always do that if there's something on a point that's full health. Even though you'd think doing 6 damage on 3 will be really, really good. It's just the fact that then 6, 7, you can do 9 of your full trees, but I just, personally having played him, he doesn't seem to get there. Even when the opponent is exposed, he doesn't often get there. But your mileage may vary. Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to make Cad work for a very long time, so maybe I'm a little bit down on him. But I haven't played him in Bounty Hunters. I do think in Bounty Hunters he does have, as we'll see, he can get buffs to get extra dice, which may well make all the difference for him, right? Yeah. And everybody you wound generating 2 force. So that's Cad. Now, I've not ranked the primaries because there's 2, and we're playing Bounty Hunters, so we're taking both, right? Now we're going to go for many people's favourite bounty hunter, Boba Fett, okay? Boba Fett's really interesting. So we'll start off with you're running out of options. At the start of this unit's activation, you can jump, or you can make a 5 dice attack targeting a primary. So if you're in combat with or within range 5 of a primary, you just get to do a 5 dice attack at the start of your turn. Really, really good. He really wants to kill primaries. That's his mission in life. And he's pretty good at it. He does get quite a lot of damage and things and different things that you can do. So that's pretty good. But even if you're just making the jump, a free jump on a secondary that you didn't pay a force for is actually really good by itself. Okay, the 5 dice attack on a primary thing, we just do that as gravy. That's fine. Knee rockets cost you a force. 2 enemy units within 3. Each chosen unit suffers a damage. It's meh. It sounds really meh. Okay, you're putting out 2 damage for 1 force on 2 different models. Why would you bother? But if you look at the stance tree for a minute, you do have a free activated ability on 4. So essentially, I would never use knee rockets before you attack. I would always see maybe you get it for free, and if you don't get it for free, you can wait till after your attack and you can be like, oh, have I left this guy on 1 damage? If I've left this guy on 1 damage, I'll definitely then spend the force. Why not? Right? And it happens sometimes, especially, how many times have you done 9 to a guy that has 9 and protection, right? Or 10 to a guy that has 10 and protection. So then you do your 1 damage and just go out, right, you're dead. Whipcord launcher. Choose an enemy within 3, pay a force, they're pinned and disarmed. And you look at that and at first you're like, well, a force for a pin isn't bad. Maybe I'm saving that. for the middle of my tree, so I can maybe throw out a free pin. And then you look back at your tree and you actually, I'm going to do this before I attack because of that disarm on 2, right? So if I can disarm my opponent, that second square becomes 2 damage. So now I can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on 3 because as a secondary, which is a bit nuts, yeah. And if I get to 4, it's effectively, isn't it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, plus the one from knee rockets that we just got for free, which is 9 in one attack. And it's not unreasonable that you're going to get 4. Okay, it doesn't necessarily have the best expertise tables, but it's not the worst I've seen either. And if you need the shove, he's got a shove on 3 as well, which is nice to have, right? Dead or Alive. When an enemy primary unit enters activation and player moves this ability, one character in this unit may jump toward a character in enemy primary unit. I'm not sure it's supposed to say that enemy primary unit or in an enemy primary unit. It just says in enemy primary unit. Let me know in the comments if you know. Could you use this to jump towards the other primary on the opposing team? Right? If you wanted to. I don't know. Hired Hand. So at the end of setup, you can either have the Galactic Empire tag or you can have the Scoundrel tag. So you can use this guy natively in Galactic Empire. Honestly, I don't see it a lot. Because he's a 4-cost secondary, Empire aren't hurting for really good 4-cost secondaries, you know? Which puts Boba Fett in a bit of a weird spot because, he's just hard to fit in. He's one of these characters that's very, very good, but he isn't really giving your list anything, if that makes sense. He isn't. He's just. He wants to go and murder a primary, and that's fine, and he might even be good at it, but he isn't really giving your list anything, right? So I can better play because I'm playing a lot of separatists. I compare him with somebody like Savage Opress in Seps, right? Who's one of these secondaries. I like Savage. I'm using him at the moment in my main separatist list, and he's also a secondary that just wants to go out and kill people. But actually, he brings a little bit more in that he's got steadfast and he synergizes a little bit with Count Dooku and gets an extra dash and stuff like this. Boba Fett's just he's going to do his one thing. He's not even the best killing. I mean, he's ranged, which Savage isn't, right? But he's not the best murdering, like focused secondary I've ever seen, and he just doesn't give anything out to the rest of your list. He can take your Galactic Empire stuff, so you can move around with your stormtroopers and stuff like that. But it's just that it's an interesting one, just because I know that Empire have things like Death Trooper Escort, which they'd rather be taking largely, right? So hard for him to find a space. Kind of talked about his tree already. I think it's really good. He has decent defensive expertise. He has pretty decent ranged expertise as well, right? Yeah, I can't complain. Jango Fett. So Boba's dad. We've talked about Django before, but since then he's been changed by the errata. We talked about him in the Seps rundown, but he has now been changed by the errata. Okay, so Django has Capture Wire. This costs a force. Choose a character in this unit, an enemy unit within 3. Pull the enemy unit 2 towards you, and then you gain a pin. Combine that with your jetpack, and essentially this guy can 4-2 force just flip a point. Right? You just walk up to somebody, pull them off the point, and then jump over the head. Right? So now it's your point. And some people would argue that you should always take him for that reason alone. Now, I'm going to go off on a slight tangent here because I am someone that really likes the Separatists. I've played around with Django, and I have started to not use him and started to use Savage Opress instead, which isn't a popular option, but he can flip a point, right? But then he's standing on a point and he's 9 wounds and he's got relatively decent defense, and the person he just pulled off the point is there and looking slightly outraged. So quite often you have the interaction and you go, oh, I've spent 2 force, that's my point now, cool. And then the Obi-Wan Kenobi or whoever it is that you just pulled off a point goes, cool, I've shatter pointed now and you're on the ground in 2 halves. Or more aptly, your head's off. So it is very powerful to be able to flip a point without having to do anything. But it's sort of weirdly, I find it as a move, it kind of weirdly, it doesn't alter the game state in the long term. So it just seems like a very kind of short-term win, if that makes any sense. I don't know. Talked about that, talked about jetpack. So not so fast. So pays a force. This is a reaction. When an opposing player chooses to activate a unit from reserve, this unit may use this ability. You can immediately dash and then make a 5 dice attack targeting a character in the unit that was chosen to activate. So this is a bit of a tricky one. So you can dash for a force when somebody activates a unit from reserve. Just taking that by itself, that could be useful if it's going to get you to body a point off somebody or get onto a point or something like that. That could be really funny and good, right? Because you're doing something in their turn, right? And it's funny if they activate somebody from reserve who's about to walk onto a point, and then you get onto the point first, and then they can't flip it, right? But you have to be within a dash tool plus range 4 to get your of the specific thing that they reserved to get your shot. So maybe you activate Django and then you see, oh, my opponent has this character in reserve, and you kind of try and make sure that you end him somewhere near that character. Might work for you. He's got I'm looking for get paid, which is basically if you wound a primary or secondary, after the effect resolve, you refresh force and you heal twice, which does mean if you're running with a bounty hunter under CAD, when you kill a primary or a secondary, you refresh 3 force, which is a bit tasty. And then when he focuses, he gets to jump, which is quite good because it means that he'll quite often have focus, right? But honestly, when I play Django, I find myself not shooting with him. I find myself using the focus jump, the jetpack jump, a move, and a capture wire quite a lot to get over there to a faraway point and flip it round, right? So he's not always getting to shoot, but there you go. His stance is good. He can do 5 damage on 3 with a bonus jump in there as well. Or you can do your 3 damage and pop down for your free capture wire, which is useful if you really need to get that and you're out of force and you can't pay for it, because of course all this, he is wanting to use 2 force to do his trick of dicelessly flipping a point. All this Django Fett talk aside, and maybe someone in the comments is going to persuade me that I need to put him back into my separatist list, I don't know. But all this Django Fett talk aside, for what we're actually trying to do here today, which is talk about bounty hunters, he's just really awkward because he's Clone Wars only. So I wanted to cover him and talk about him again, not only because it's something where I actually have more useful stuff to say because I've got experience of him, but also because he's changed since we did the Separatist rundown. But actually, as far as he is a bounty hunter and he can do work under CAD, because CAD's got the eras, but it means that you're locked into then running that CAD Django bounty hunter squad, which there's something wrong with that. I just want to take IG-88. It's to be totally blunt. And yeah, there we go. Let's go, IG-88. So I really like IG-88. I think IG-88 may well be the glue that makes bounty hunter teams work, weirdly. And we're going to go straight to that ability that I think he has that's so good, which is I engineer success, yet it eludes me. So when an allied bounty hunter character makes an attack as part of a combat action, if the target is contesting an active objective that you do not control, you can use this ability. Add 3 dice to the attack roll. If you don't wound them, lose momentum. So it is a gamble. You're spending a force and you're staking a momentum, because everybody starts with 1 momentum as well. So you know, if you ever wanted to see what 0 momentum looked like, now's your chance. That you can wound somebody with 3 extra dice. Now, just going back to look at the things that we've looked at, you think about the Mandalorian, for example. I mean, he'd really love 3 extra dice for bring you in cold. I think that's a bet you might take against nearly everybody. And not just fishing for that, not just fishing for that 4 expertise, which would be nice, but also if you get enough hits through, if you get to go 6 through, which is not again unreasonable when you're rolling 10 dice, right? You can do 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You can do 10 damage that way. So it's very compelling. It's going to help CAD as well, right? It's going to help CAD 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You can get to 9. That might pick somebody off, right? Not necessarily a primary, although there are 9 primaries like CAD himself, but you know, it means that the back end of your tree isn't a dream anymore. Boba likes it as well because Boba really wants to get to 4. We generally say 3 is kind of our vague, loose expectation a lot of the time. So Boba wants to get to 4. 5 would be nice as well. Like, just those extra dice are really good. Now, it's true, you could potentially just spam away all your momentum and it could cause you to lose the game. That's quite possible. But there are times in Shatterpoint where you have more momentum than you know what to do with, especially if you're losing and getting those pity cubes. You don't care. You'll spend the pity cubes away to try and get the advantage, to try and get the equilibrium back, right? So I think it's a really strong ability. Yes, you do. But the fact that it's rangeless, it does cost a force, but you've got CAD, so you've probably got plenty of force. It doesn't have a range requirement, and you're adding 3 dice. I think that's really good. Let's look at the rest of what his card does, but basically that's why I think you bring him, even though he costs 5 points. High priority targets. At the start of this unit's activation, 1 character in this unit may dash, and then if there are 1 or more enemy characters within 5, it can make a focus. This is, I mean, look, a free dash on a secondary is good, so I'm not going to complain too much about it, right? But it's kind of a weird one because if you have to, because it's a tactic, you have to do it at the start of the activation. Now, let's look at the mechanism of focus. A focus is spending an action for a dice, and generally, you focus if you don't need to move to get your attack, right? So in the case where if you dash and there's an enemy character within 5, you probably, if you didn't need your move action, like what are you doing with that action that you've not spent on a focus? Now, obviously, there are nice times when this will come up because you might do a dash, and you go, oh well, there's an enemy character within 5. I mean, it's a wounded Commander Pons, but it's there. I get my focus action, and now I'm going to move and attack something else with my free focus dice. So it's not awful. It's just a little bit. It's a little bit not as it's not quite as good as you think it is, basically, but it's still useful. Always gets the job done for a force. Choose an enemy unit within 2, roll 3 defense dice. If there are any hits, they're strained. If there are any expertise, they're disarmed. And if there are any misses, they are exposed. It is a bit random. It's got a decent chance of throwing out that expose and a bunch of other conditions as well for a force. I feel like if it's working, if you're wounding people, if you're getting your 4th refresh from campaign, and you feel like you have the spare force, then you can go for it. but it's very much a kind of a if you know if I have him, if I see how many cards I got left, if it's in the budget, I'll spend it, but I won't like spend it recklessly. Calculated plans. When a character in this unit makes an attack as part of a combat action during the modified actual step, you can reroll up to 2 misses or expertises in the attack roll, which is pretty good. It's pretty good. I'd be interested to know. I don't know if there's a forum ruling on this. Could you pick up a miss, re-roll it, and based on that result, decide whether you wanted to pick up an expertise and re-roll that? Do you know? I'm just thinking about the case where you've got, like maybe I've rolled 2 expertise, so I can re-roll my miss into an expertise. I'll keep all my expertise and have a crit and a hit. But if I re-roll that miss into a hit, then I'd rather re-roll the second expertise because I'm not getting anything for it. So be interested to know the answer on that one. I assume that you have to pick up both dice. You have to commit and pick up both dice and re-roll them, though. But I don't know. And then we've talked about engineer success. Let's look at his stance cards. So he's got 5 damage on 3, which is really good. That's kind of a benchmark for what a decent damage on a secondary is, right? Or 2 shoves on 3. 8 damage on 5, which getting 5 through with his rerolls doesn't seem, and his free focus doesn't seem that impossible. Also, he can engineer success on himself. Yeah, you know, he's a cool guy. I don't know how often you want to use the engineer success on him and not on people like, you know, people where it's more of a sure thing. But obviously, you're going to look at how many wounds the thing that you're shooting at is and make that judgment, right? But I think it's really cool. Aura Sing also costs 5 and is so competing with 88B. She's got double the contract, double the payout, so you can pay a force to do a 5 dice attack after you attack that has to target a different character. So that can be worth doing for sure. If you have the option, you have 2 characters within 5, you shoot one, you pay a force to shoot the other. Alternatively, you can do hit and run, which is where after you've shot, you can make a full reposition. You can't do both of those things because you can only do 1 trigger off 1 thing. Expendable distraction. So when you make a ranged attack, it's part of a combat action. If the defender is engaged with one or more allied characters in units that are not wounded, you can add 3 dice to your attack roll. If it does, choose one of those engaged allied units and they suffer 2 damage. I'd always take that. 2 damage for 3 dice is great. You know, it's funny. This is what we looked at Hondo before, just at the start, and he's like, I like about 2 damage, and I spat out strain, which is really annoying, onto loads of guys. Whereas this is more normal and acceptable because it's 3 dice for 2 damage. There is a funny I don't think it's a good thing, but there is a funny thing. So she has a 7 dice ranged attack with expendable distraction. It goes up to 10. If you run a list where you take Cad Bane and Aura Sing in one squad, and in the other squad you take Andor, Cassian Andor, and IG-88B, just because Andor's also a 9 cost and has an ability. You know, 88B can give you another 3 dice, right? So that's 13 dice. And then Andor, if you Shatterpoint, gives you Sharpshooter 2. So you can get quite a lot of dice. Sort of 16 dice attack. I'm not saying it's good, and I'm not saying it's worth building a whole list around, but it is funny, right? Before we talk about on contract, let's look at her stance card that's quite damage. So she's got a lot of damage, right? She's got damage in her expertise tree, which is always fun. Yeah, and her expertise tree is pretty good. You know, 2 expertise getting you a crit hit and damage is really quite nice. Okay. She can do a lot, you know. She can do 5 damage on 3, which is what we kind of look for. And if she has a really good day, right, 9. And then if she happens to hit those top 2 on her custom sniper rifle, That's 11 damage. So, she got the chance to kill almost anybody in one shot. It's not going to happen that often, but she's got the chance of doing it. She's also got really quite a nice defensive expertise where she can dodge or even reposition out of the way after she's been shot, which is quite nice. Now let's talk about on contract. At the end of setup, which is an allied primary unit and a tag that unit has, this unit has the chosen tag. So actually, I don't really like her in a bounty hunter list because I want to take IG-88B if I'm taking a 5 cost, right? And her eras are annoying because she's Clone Wars only, right? But she's really, really good with this ability, especially, and Dathomir is the best example I can think of. You're looking for a Clone Wars tag. Because like we were saying with Boba Fett, usually you're not actually that hungry to bring in a bounty hunter, even one that shares your tag, because generally your in-faction stuff that you already have will have more synergy and do more for you, right? But with Dathomir, if you want to play a Dathomir list, there's only 5 Dathomir things in the game, and 3 of those are primaries, so you can only have 4 native Dathomir people in the game. So therefore, Aura Singh becomes a 5th Dathomirian, right? And so I haven't played it yet, but I quite like the idea of a list that is Darth Maul with Aura Singh and then the Padawans, who only need to care about the Force user tag. I know it sounds weird, but evil Padawans, why not? And then Mother Talzin's book, and that could work really well. I think that's the best place for Aura Singh. I don't think the best place for it is in a bounty hunters list. Boosh. Oh, boosh, 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 boosh. So it's Princess Leia. Not that that's very relevant to us. In a bounty hunter, we can pretend it's Boosh before Princess Leia pretended to be them, or I don't know. Did Luke, Leia, and Chewie kill Boosh and steal their clothes? I don't really understand how that works. But Boosh has fan out, which is a reposition or a reposition for another allied spy. There are no other bounty hunter spies, but a reposition for yourself is pretty good. Low blow, I talked about this before when I did the Rebels rundown. So it's 2 force, which is expensive, and then you choose a character in this unit, an enemy character it's engaged with. You push the chosen character 2 away from the chosen allied character. Then you push the chosen allied character 2 toward the chosen enemy character. And after all moves are resolved, the unit makes focus action. It's diceless displacement and a focus for 2. It should be good. I just worry about having to be particularly cleverly. If you imagine there's somebody on a point, you push them 2 away, and then you follow up 2, you got to make sure they're off the point and you're still on it. Right, and it's just a bit. It's not bad, it's not awful. I just don't like how much the potential for like, oh, I mispositioned my model and now my thing was a waste of 2 force. You know? Yeah. Fearless and inventive, we've talked about this already. It's nice when it comes up, right, for a force. And then I want 50,000 no less. When you wound a primary, you gain a momentum unless the opponent's player spends a force. It's not bad. You make your opponent player drain force. I just don't know how often Boosh is wounding a primary other than just by dumb luck, right? Because her stance is so 4 damage on 3, so she's not hitting that kind of 5 damage on 3 watermark, which especially is something I'd want from somebody that has an on-wound ability as one of their things. 9 potential damage. I'm not sure that you're going to see it. Yeah, you can get those extra dice from IG-88. And a push on 2. She's not actually awful. There are just all the other bounty hunters are better, basically. Right? And that's what it comes down to. Dengar, the Demolisher. Who's Dengar? One day I'll learn. I know he appears in The Empire Strikes Back and doesn't say anything, but I don't know where his names come from. When you activate him, he can dash towards an enemy character. That's pretty cool. He has Payday. How have we got nearly an hour into talking about bounty hunters, and this is the first time we've encountered Payday? So Payday is kind of this signature bounty hunter ability that some bounty hunters have, which basically means that you can spend a force and you can gain a tag of your choice until the end of turn. So Payday's cool. It means that you can drop something in to a list, and it can gain synergy with that list. And then a thing that you have to remember that you can do, for example, so let's say you wanted to run Lando and Andor and Dengar for whatever reason. You could then use Lando's ability to make Dengar a Rebel Alliance all the time, and then when it was relevant, you could payday Dengar into being a rebel and a spy, right? Because you could payday yourself into being a spy. I don't think that's worthwhile, but it's worth knowing that's what you can do with Lando, where you've got the Rebel and the Empire tag, and then you could use Payday to receive a sub-faction tag, which is sometimes useful with the way things are set up, right? So you could be, I don't know, like a Spectre, a Rebel Spectre, or an Empire. Is Inquisitorius nested like that? I don't think it is, but you know, there's those sorts of options, right? Explosive regards. When you're wounded, roll 5 dice. The unit that wounded you suffers a hit and a damage for each hit and crit you roll. It's annoying. You're not going to plan for it. You're not going to plan around it. You're not going to do anything about it. But you're just going to be like, yeah, oh, you wounded me. You know, and very occasionally someone will wound you with somebody who only themselves has like 3 wounds, and then you just be like, right, well, you also die. Being underestimated has its values. When you spend a force to put a bounty hunter's unit order card in reserve, spend 1 less force. So this is powerful, right? Especially if your opponent is using Moff Gideon, and then you just ignore that and you go back down to spending the normal amount. But I feel like because when you're playing bounty hunters, you're almost always going to be playing with campaign. You shouldn't, touch wood, have a massive force problem. So while this is very, very powerful, it's only useful if you're playing all bounty hunters. If you're playing all bounty hunters, probably Cad's there, so maybe force isn't your biggest issue. I don't know. And then the real best thing on his card is he has steadfast and he can't be pinned, and he has 9 wounds. So he's inexorable. He's always getting his dash, and if you put him on an objective, he's just going to step there. And that honestly is the best thing about Dengar. He's got 5 on 3, which is what we kind of look for a secondary. That's good. He's got a shove on 2, which is okay, not bad. Maxes out at 7 damage, which is interesting. He wants to be in melee. He's a melee guy, despite doesn't quite make sense to me because he has a named blaster rifle, the DLT 19 heavy blaster rifle, but its expertise table is kind of bad. But his melee, he has more dice in melee, he has more defense in melee, and his melee expertise table is quite interesting with pins and stuff in it as well, which is pretty neat. Boss is amazing because he costs 3. And like, do you remember what I said about how you don't often want to put a 4-cost bounty on secondary into like another faction because you got really good 4 costs? Not every faction has really good 3 costs. That's not a universal thing. So Bosk is the bounty hunter that you see the most, just popping up in random other lists because somebody's gone, oh, I really want to take this and this and this. A 3-cost secondary. So I mean, like, Rebels have 1, and it's Luke. So maybe you don't want to run Luke because you're running primary Luke. So then you can run Bosk, right? Because maybe you want to run a 4-cost support. You know, things like this. Or maybe you're running all the Inquisitors with Darth Vader, and then you like, oh, I could run Stormtrooper Sergeant, but also Bosk is here. Bosk's cool people. We like Bosk on this channel. Bosk has regeneration, so at the start of his activation, as long as he's not strained, he just removes all damage and condition from himself. Now, he only has 8 wounds, and he has pretty bad defensive expertise, so there's a decent chance he gets 1 tap, but if he doesn't, he just regenerates fully, which is lovely. Explosive ordnance. You pay a force, you get a dash. There's some other junk, but I want to be very clear, because I looked it up on the forum. Even if there's no enemy within 5, you get to do your dash. So you pay 4, you get a dash. Then, listen, if there's an enemy character within 5, you have to select them. Okay? And you roll 5 attack dice. Each unit within 2 of the chosen characters suffers a damage for each expertise. It's probably not going to be that much damage. And do notice, if there is an enemy character within 5, you have to choose them. That part isn't optional. So even if you'd rather not, because maybe the enemy character within 5 is surrounded by friendly characters, if you want to use explosive ordnance and there's an enemy character within 5, you have to select them. Right? Now, it could be that this is really good for you because there's loads of enemies clustered around with very few friendlies, and you can just pop out, a damage or 2, which is nice. But apart from that, you pay a force for a dash, which is nice. You got Payday. I've already spoken about Payday, all the Payday things. And then you've got we have a job to do. So you've got a revenge trigger. Whenever another allied bounty hunter unit is wounded by an attack, after the effect resolves, you use the ability. One character in this unit may dash towards a character in that allied unit. In this unit may dash towards the allied unit. They make a 5-dash attack, targeting the enemy character that wounded them. Obviously, you're not always going to be in range. It doesn't have a range 5 gun, which is cool. So a dash in range 5 away from the person. It's free as well. And this makes Bosk, even though I would advocate for taking Bosk in random other lists where this ability isn't here, it makes him really, really tempting in bounty hunter lists, doesn't it? Now, why do I rate Bosk so highly, even in other lists, even though basically I've just said he has regeneration and a dash for a force with something that might occasionally happen? Because this tree's really good for a 3 cost. He's got 5 damage on 3, and he's a 3 cost, right? He's got 7 damage on 4, right? For a 3, okay. Are you going to get 4 hits through all the time? Possibly not. Although if you're running in bounty hunters, which is what we're talking about, you've got IG88, right? So you've got the calculus there of looking at it and going, well, how many wounds does this guy have? Do I want 3 extra dice? Do I feel like on 10 dice I can get 4 successes? Right? And then I kill an 8 wound character. Sorry, a 7 wound character. Yeah. That could do it for you. You can max at 8. But I just think having that IG88 in the faction suddenly, maybe it's a dream. Maybe if I actually played these lists, I'd just lose all my momentum, right? But it makes it feel within touching distance all the time in a really tempting way. Let's look at Grief Karga. He also costs 3. Grief Karga is not a bounty hunter. Grief Karga has some of my favourite people in bounty hunters for a force. Each allied bounty hunter within 4 may heal and then dash. So, like a bubble of 4, like a massive global dash bounty hunters. As someone that's played Kalani a lot in Separatists, this kind of ability is really, really, really good when you get him early game, and then it's slightly annoying when you get him late game. Right? And with Kalani, it's kind of forgivable because on Kalani, it's only battle droids, and so quite often you go, okay, I haven't drawn Kalani, but I've got a primary, that one doesn't matter, and you can get a couple of activations in before you kind of totally mess yourself up. With Grief, it's like, well, really I need to draw him first, because the minute I draw a different bounty hunter, I'm not maximizing the advantage of my free dash, it is what it is. But you're probably going to get at least 1 or 2 dashes out of it for a force, which isn't bad, right? You got Close the Deal for a force. When an opposing... So this is... To spare myself from reading it. Remember Jango Fett? Right? When you bring someone out of reserve, you can dash and make a 5-dash attack. He has that, except instead of him having to do it, he can make any of your other bounty hunters do it. So now, instead of it being Jango or Grief Karga, it's Boba Fett, or it's the Mandalorian, right? Somebody that can actually potentially kill things that are then doing the dash to 5-dash attack. That's pretty good. There is one job. So this is a bit weird. Before revealing the top card of the mission deck, choose an opposing player to reveal a card from the top of their order deck until a unit order card is revealed. Then the chosen player marks the corresponding unit card with the priority objective token and shuffles their order deck. The first time an allied bounty hunter character wounds the marked unit, move the struggle token one space towards your momentum token, and then remove the priority objective token. So this is like some days it's going to be Commander Pons, and some days it's going to be Darth Vader, right? That you've got to wound. It's nice though. It's free and it's potential an extra victory, like pull, whatever you call it, right? A space towards your momentum token. There should be a more succinct phrase for that, probably, but sure. Like, yes, it's good. And then he's got wolves on the back. Basically, he breaks ties and objectives. So if there's an objective that's tied, Grief takes the tie. This side of his card's really, really good. But 4 damage on 3, so he doesn't meet that 5 damage on 3 threshold that I'm kind of obsessed with. He's got a push on 2. His damage maxes out at 5. His expertise tables are just bizarrely awful, though, right? Like, oh, good. I got 1 ranged expertise. I guess you disarmed. I got 3 ranged expertise. That's a single crit and a disarm. Grief is one of those characters, and there are a few of these in Shatterpoint, where they got so much buff and synergy and stuff that they do, but it's very hard to have an impactful turn on their activation with them when you are set the challenge of, okay, now get me a point, right? And in Shatterpoint, it feels like you can barely afford to have a turn where you activate something and you don't flip 1 point from your opponent over to you. And failing to do that feels like it's basically how you lose. And so it's the same reason I stopped playing campaign in Separatists. You can't afford, I don't think, to have an activation where you don't flip a point. And it almost doesn't matter how good everything else on the card is. If you can't perform the basic mission, which is I've activated, I'm going to try and flip at least. I mean, preferably you're flipping 2 points or 10 points or, doing loads of cool, weird stuff. But if your odds of trying and flipping a 1 point are just really low, now he does have wolves at my back, so there is the chance that you can just go, cool, it's my turn. I'll do so. My favorite people are bounty hunters, and then I'm just going to move and hunker, and I'm going to stand on a point that you were previously controlling with one model, and we flip it. And that's valid. That is valid, but you're relying on a move and a hunker to do that. Or I guess you shoot somebody and you hope to go 3 down your tree and get to the repo, and then leverage wolves at your back. Like Kaz play, he's not awful. I prefer Bosk, basically. I'm sure you can win games with Grief Karga, right? I don't think anybody in Shatterpoint is actually that bad. He just doesn't sing to me right now. I hope I'll explain why. So here's my ranking of secondaries. I rank Bosk over Grief. For the purposes of a bounty hunter list, I think I go Boba, then Dengar, then Django, and then Boosh. The only one of those 4 that I think is bad is Boosh, right? The other 3 is just going to depend on what you want. Django is the king of diceless displacement. Dengar is the king of just not dying, right? And Boba is the king of brutal murder. And you have those options. Django also gives you force refresh. The problem that I have with Django, honestly, if Django was in Age of Rebellion, he'd be on top. But because he's got the force refresh and the diceless displacement and a fair amount of mobility, okay. But the thing is, you can't put him under Mando You have to put him with CAD, and if you put him with CAD, you can't put a 5, none of the 5 cost secondaries that you might want to run fit in there. So you can't make space for IG-88 anywhere in your list. And like playing a point down is one of those things where Zimbad always tells me off. He's like, playing a point down is less relevant than you think. And maybe it is less relevant than I think, but when what I think is I really would like to fit IG-88 into my list, and he costs 5, I don't want to take a 4 cost and play him a point down with Cad Bane for that concrete reason. So I do think he's bad. And then again, I really like Aura Singh since she got buffed. I think in the context of a Bounty Hunters list, you want IG-88. I think if I was looking for a 5 cost to drop into another list that wasn't Bounty Hunters, IG-88 is rubbish outside of Bounty Hunters, right? Outside of having this really good global buff where you give everybody 3 extra dice, I don't think you ever take him, right? And so if the ranking is for outside of Bounty Hunters, Django, it's difficult because he doesn't have payday, so you can run him in Seps or in some way you don't care about tags. Same deal with Boo. Boo's just rubbish. But Aura, Dengar, Boba, and Bosk, I think, all can do really good work outside of Bounty Hunters. Bosk because he's so cheap and still has like 5 damage on 3. Boba just because he's a murder bot, and Dengar just because he's a stoic sitting on a point bot, right? I don't think you take Grief ever, if I'm being quite honest with you, unless what you're trying to do is build a really thematic premier list that's all scoundrels, and so you want to use Bosk somewhere else, and then you use Grief, because everything is that bad. So you use Grief with the Bounty Hunters, but I don't think you use them very often. Right, let's get on to this unit amuses me because I think it's probably is one of the few units in Shatterpoint there's no one in particular. It's just the concept of some bounty hunters. So you get a free dash, which is great. So you start, you get a dash, good. Take that every day of the week. Tools of the trade. So for a force, you can inflict disarm on an enemy within 3. I don't think that's ever worth a force. Or you can have sharpshooter 2 and impact 2 until the end of turn. So basically, bounty hunters are extremely feast or famine because either you're in a position where, with your free dash and no movement, you have somebody within 5 to shoot, or you're in melee with somebody, right? In which case, you can, for a force, make a get sharpshooter 2, do a focus action, and then make a 9 dice attack. Sorry, 8 dice attack. No, 9 dice attack, yeah, because sharpshooter or impact 2 takes to 8, plus the focus itself takes to 9. And I believe that's on both the attacks as well, right? So when you can do that, they're really good. When you can't do that, they're less good. 4 damage on 3. Now, we're looking at a 2 model support now, so you can't expect 5 damage on 3. 4 damage on 3. They both get that through. That's 8 damage. That's great. Okay. So that's pretty good. You got to push on 1 as well if you want it, if you need it. So that's pretty good. The expertise, defensive expertise is okay for a support. The offensive expertise is kind of horrid. But you're not, if you roll precisely 2 at range, and you get a crit and a straight damage through for your 2, you're not that upset. No. And then the last one, we got IG-11 Assassin Droid. So the first thing to say is he is a one-body support. And one-body supports are, in my experience, almost never worth it. And there are some that are, like Fifth Brother, right? But in general, I don't like a one-body support because losing that extra body feels like a really big deal a lot of the time. So, okay. On the hunt, you can remove a condition and do a dash every time you start. Brilliant, great, wonderful. multi-threaded targeting protocol. You can make a 5-dice attack targeting a character in another enemy unit within range and line of sight after he's done his regular attack. Look, it's really good. And if it was on a secondary, I'd be saying it's really good. But he's lost his mate. If I had 2 models, I could make 2 full attacks against 1 character. You see what I'm saying? Right? So the fact that it has to be a second character, like, yeah, it's okay. It makes up for it a little bit, but it's okay. And then he has, are you refusing my request? So he can essentially give IG-88's buff to himself, right? So he adds 3 dice to the attack, and if they're not wounded, you lose momentum, and it's free for him to do it to himself. The trouble is, just look at his tree. He can do 4 damage on 2, so if he's shooting somebody that's nearly dead, and the 4 damage is going to kill them, then fine. But then you need 3 extra dice to get to 2, maybe reliably, but you know. But his max damage, right, is 7, and that would require you to get 6 successes, which it just seems really unlikely that that he's going to actually make that gamble unless he's targeting something that he was probably going to kill with, like the spot where, well, I need these 3 dice to kill you, but these 3 dice are going to make all the difference, is really narrow with his tree, I think. You could double up and have a bonus 6 dice if you have IG-88 as well, but then you lose 2 momentum if you didn't wound. So there's that option in there as well, I suppose. And then he's got victory through combat is impossible, which just makes me cringe. So notice he has 3 stamina, right? Which is everyone else has 2 unless they're a primary, right? Why does he have 3 stamina? Well, while he's wounded, each time you gain momentum, if there are more enemy characters than allied characters within 3, roll a dice for each wounded and injured token he has. If any of them misses, you may dash, and then each character within 3 gets 5 damage. And that's funny and thematic, and it reminds you of that scene in The Mandalorian. But I feel like it's just, you're already playing a body down, and it feels like you're quite quickly going to be playing 2 bodies down, and that just makes the game of standing on circles really hard. And Shatterpoint is a game that you win by standing on the circles, you know? We can look at his stance. He does 4 on 2, like I said. We already looked at his stance. It's just the idea that he's 1 body, so really I want to be seeing 5 on 3, which he can't do. 4 on 2 will be fantastic for a 2-body sport, because that's 8, right? Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. Mm, mm, mm. Not the biggest IG-11 fan, it turns out, which is annoying because playing with both IG bots would look really cool on the tabletop, and he was a really cool character in The Mandalorian, right? Some lists. So I think if you want to use all bounty hunters, right, I think your best list is CAD, IG-88, the bounty hunters, the Mandalorian, Bosk, and IG-11, right? If you fancy using Dengar and the Mando, then it's worth noticing that you can swap. So that IG-11 runs under CAD, and the bounty hunters run under Mando, and then you can take 2 4 points instead of a 5 and a 3. Right? You're still taking 8 points worth of secondaries, but you can split it out differently like that. Personally, I think you never leave home without IG-88. I think he kind of makes bounty hunter themed lists work. That's my view. So then you've got your other option, because a lot of people don't like, including me, I think, the concept of IG-11. You can basically replace IG-11 with Han and Chewie in it for the money, who aren't bounty hunters. They are scoundrels, and they're pretty good. We'll look at their card in a minute, okay? And then you can do that in either combination. So if you wanted Dengar and Boba Fett, or IG-88 and Bosk, you can decide between those. I think IG-88 and Bosk is the way to go still. And then the only other thing that you could do that maybe this is a little bit of a curveball for people, because I've not seen anybody saying this. Instead of Han and Chewie, if you ran the Weak Way Pirates, again, they're not bounty hunters, but they are scoundrels. That would let you take Boba Fett and IG-88. That might be really cool. Or you could take Dengar and IG-88 if you preferred, right? So let's just look at those two new. First of all, in the comments, especially if I've got very little experience actually playing with these, right? I'm just giving my opinions from reading the cards. If you've played with these guys, let me know in the comments what you think of these lists and which one you personally prefer. But I know, I know the guy that plays these at, and I played into him at Athena Games in Norwich that plays Bounty Hunters. That it will, now that CAD's eras have been changed, is going to run this one down here, the second to last one, right, with Han and Chewie and Bosk and IG-88, right? But yeah, which is your favorite? Let me know. Let's just look at Han and Chewie now. I've reviewed the Han and Chewie before in the Rebels video, right? So they're scoundrels, which is why I've picked them. I was just looking at the scoundrel tagged supports, so they don't break anything that Mando has, where he desperately wants people to be Mandos or scoundrels or bounty hunters. Okay, they've got Lookout. He's loose for a force, which is similar to campaigns have at your step aside. To be fair, so one character in this unit may dash after resolve. If the character is engaged with one or more enemy characters, choose one of those enemy characters. They can dash. After their move is resolved, if it's no longer engaged, it gains a disarm. If it's still engaged, it gains an expose. It's generally going to be a dash and an expose with extra steps. Okay, it's good that you can use it just for a force to get a dash for free, right? And then you got the reaction, boring combination anyway. You pay a force after a combat action, and then you can do a reposition, which is pretty good, right? Has to be sequenced after an attack, but it's pretty good. They have an ability called I Expect You Well Paid. So this is Payday. So you can ironically use Payday to Payday into Bounty Hunter if, for example, you wanted to become a Bounty Hunter so that you could use IG-88's ability. That would be 2 force, which might not be something you care about. You probably couldn't use it to trigger Bosk's revenge trigger, unless you could just like your opponent flips a model that you're engaged with and you have 1 wound and you're like, cool, I'm clearly about to get wounded. I'll spend a force to be a bounty hunter so that when you kill me, Bosk can come and kill you. And that might actually be quite effective because when you explain that, they might decide to do something different. So it's an option you have. What you'd never do is spend a force, obviously, to generate an extra force on the wound with campaign. And what's interesting is, because of their last ability, which is we're all fine here now, thank you. When you wound someone, you heal and refresh a force. So it doesn't break the rather fun thing of everyone in your team refreshing 2, because CAD for non-bounty hunters refreshes 1, so you can still refresh 2 whenever anyone on your team wounded, which is quite nice. In terms of their stance card, right, so they have 4 damage on 3, which is perfectly fine for a 2-month support. They have a push on 2, or a push on 1 if they don't mind picking the less damage path, which is pretty good, right? And they have 10 wounds, and they're 2 models. I think they're better than IG-11. The other option, now this is a bit hold my beer because everyone is down on the Weak Way Pirates. I'm not actually sure why. So they're scoundrels. They only cost 4. So you were taking them so we can replace Bosk with Dengar or Boba, right? They can, for a force, do a climb, but because of exit strategy, they can climb when they're engaged. So essentially, you can do a force for a jump. Fine, good, great. When they're on an objective, they're steadfast, which is really good. They've got 9 wounds and they're steadfast, and there's 2 of them, and they're on an objective. Okay, good. And then they've got Pack Hunter. When they make a melee attack targeting an enemy character that's engaged with another allied weak way character, it adds 2 dice to the attack roll. So as long as you keep them together, right, on an objective together, when they're fighting, they're both throwing 8 dice because they both. It's not a separate. It's not another Iron Weak Way unit. It's another Iron Weak Way character, and there's 2 weak. So there's not 1 weak way. There's 2 weak way, right? So they each just buff each other, and it doesn't matter that the rest of your you don't synergize with the rest of your thing, right? It's not Guam. Guam has this problem because he's 1 weak way. These guys are 2 weak way, right? So all they need to do is stand close to each other, and then they get to do 8 dice. I like that, right? They got a push on 1. They got 4 damage on 3. They got a repo on 3. I mean, yeah, the tree max is at 6, which is meh. But then again, there are 2 model support, so they got 4 damage on 3. I'll do that twice. That's 8 damage, and then you might well be dead, right? And plus, I've got 8 dice, so maybe I'm going to do something funky and get to 4 rather than 3. Now, I'll grant you, their expertise tables are kind of poor, but they do have damage on them, which is always a fun thing to have, right? So, do I think it's amazing? No, I just think that actually, since they got buffed, people should just pay attention to the fact that weak way pirates exist and they're a decent. If what you want is a 4-cost scoundrel support, they're pretty good. You could do worse. Final thoughts. A bit simpler, although actually I was supposed to be in bed about an hour ago. Don't know why I thought I'd get this video done in half an hour. There you go. I like to run on. A bit simpler than the last big tag review. We are nearly done with these. I will do Empire eventually. I'm going back to work tomorrow, so it's going to be a while before I get around to doing Empire. Really need to do some kill team. Honestly, today I thought they were going to put the kill team new next box up for pre-order with the Tyranids and the Servitors, and I'd just make a quick video about that, and it'd be all good. Alas, Games Workshop keep betraying me. And because I'm not actively thinking loads about kill team, ideas for new videos aren't coming into my head, whereas so many Shatterpoint videos that I want to make right now, so that's where we are and what we're doing. Do you totally disagree with anything I've said? I'd love to know in the comments. Do you have any favourite bounty hunter-centric lists for Star Wars Shatterpoint that I haven't noticed? Let me know. It doesn't just have to be pure bounty hunters. It could be just, oh, I really like a bounty hunter in this list, or in this list. That'd be cool as well. Especially if you're here for the Shatterpoint content, do subscribe, comment, like, etc. I always feel like I know I've got this established base of people that love Kill Team, and I'm not dropping Kill Team. I'm working really hard painting a Kill Team right now. They're here, but it's nice to get some positive reinforcement on the Shatterpoint stuff as well. I want to say, speaking of positive reinforcement, we got a new member at the top tier, a new member of the Pink Name Club. It seems like there can only be 2. It's like Sif, because Nightfall Dag raised again, and then to replace him, Alex has risen up. So there's always 2 people on the elite tier. So I want to say a big thank you to Sam and Alex for supporting me, especially to Sam, who's been really just consistent. And I know he doesn't like Shatterpoint either, and he's just consistently paying the money every month, which is really cool. So thank you guys. I appreciate the support. I really do. Like, you legends. All my members are legends, to be honest, but I can't. I don't want to go on one of these channels that goes and lists out like 28 names at the end of every video. But thank you. It means a lot. All right. Thanks, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you again next time. I don't have any conception of what Monday's video will be, if I even have the gumption to make a video on Monday. But I'll see you when I do. Cheery bye. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye-bye.